A $500,000 retirement portfolio, 2 states, and by the time you factor in income tax, property tax, inheritance tax, and 3 costs that nobody warns you about, one state saves you over $30,000 across a 20-year retirement. The other one protects everything you leave to your kids. Which one wins depends entirely on a question most retirees never think to ask. I'm Jim Stevenson, a realtor here in the Philadelphia suburbs, and I help people relocating from New York run the real monthly math behind the towns they're considering. Let's start with the part everyone thinks they already know: income tax. Pennsylvania has a flat 3.07% state income tax rate. New York's is progressive, starting at 4% and climbing all the way up to 10.9% depending on your income bracket. On paper, that looks like a blowout for Pennsylvania. But here's what actually matters when you're retired and living on a fixed income. Pennsylvania doesn't tax your Social Security, doesn't tax your pension, doesn't tax your 401k withdrawals, and it doesn't tax your IRA distributions either, as long as you're over 59 and a half. So if you're pulling $80,000 a year from Social Security and a 401k combined, your Pennsylvania state income tax bill is $0. Zero. Every dollar you withdraw goes to your life, not to Harrisburg. New York does exempt your Social Security. That part's the same. And if you retired from a New York State or local government job, your pension is fully exempt too. Teacher, police officer, firefighter, municipal worker. New York doesn't touch that pension. Doesn't matter if it's $50,000 or $150,000, fully protected. But if you worked in the private sector and you're living off a 401k or a traditional IRA, New York only gives you a $20,000 exclusion per person. That number has been $20,000 since 1981. There are some potential bills to raise it, but as of right now, it's still $20,000. Everything above that gets taxed at New York's progressive rates. So let's say you're pulling $100,000 a year from a 401k. In Pennsylvania, you owe $0 in state income tax. In New York, you're paying state income tax on $80,000 of that. At New York's rates, that works out to roughly $4,500 to $5,000 a year in state tax alone. That's $375 to $415 a month. That's a car payment. That's a chunk of your property tax bill. On a fixed income, that's real money that just disappears. And this is the exact math I walk through with buyers before they even start looking at homes. Because where you retire doesn't just change your lifestyle, it changes what you can actually afford to live in each month. So for most private sector retirees with meaningful 401k or IRA balances, Pennsylvania's income tax advantage is real and it's significant. And it's the reason most people assume the decision between these two states is a slam dunk. But here's where it gets interesting. If you're a retired New York public school teacher collecting a $75,000 pension, that pension is fully exempt in New York. You pay $0 in state income tax on it. If that same teacher moves to Pennsylvania, the pension is also exempt in PA. So for public employees, the income tax comparison is actually a wash. Both states exempted. The decision for that person comes down to everything else I'm about to cover. And some of those numbers favor New York more than you would expect. But for the majority of retirees watching this video, the ones living on private sector 401k and IRA money, Pennsylvania's advantage is pretty clear here. That assumption is also exactly where the trouble starts. Because Pennsylvania has a tax that most people don't hear about until their estate attorney explains it to their adult children. And by then, it's too late to restructure anything. Pennsylvania has no estate tax. That sounds great until you hear what it has instead. It's called the inheritance tax, and it works completely differently from an estate tax. Here's the difference, and this is important. An estate tax is based on the total size of your estate. In New York, the estate tax doesn't kick in until the estate hits $7.35 million. That's the 2026 number. If your total estate is under that, your kids owe $0 to the state of New York. And New York has no inheritance tax, none. Your children inherit everything without the state taking a cut. Pennsylvania flips that completely. No estate tax, but the inheritance tax starts from the very first dollar. Your kids inherit a $500,000 house, Pennsylvania takes 4.5%. That's $22,500. They inherit $300,000 in savings accounts and investments, another $13,500. The total tax bill on an $800,000 estate going to 2 children, $36,000. Gone before probate even closes. If a sibling inherits instead of a child, the rate jumps up to 12%. Non-relatives pay 15%. I'll say that again because this is the number that shocks people. A $500,000 paid-off house in Pennsylvania triggers a $22,500 tax bill for your children the moment you pass. In New York, that same house transfers with 0 state inheritance tax. Now you're probably thinking, fine, I'll just gift my assets to my kids while I'm alive and skip the whole thing. That makes sense on the surface, but here's what actually happens in the real world. Pennsylvania has a 1-year look-back rule. Any gift over $3,000 that you make within the last 12 months of your life gets pulled back into your taxable estate. The state treats it like the gift never happened. You can't time it. You can't game it on your deathbed. Life insurance proceeds are generally exempt from the inheritance tax. That's one of the main tools estate attorneys use to offset the hit, but you need to set that up well in advance. So here's the trade-off in plain English. Pennsylvania saves you money every single month you're alive. New York protects your kids' inheritance when you're gone. I call this the alive versus gone trade-off, and it's the single most important decision point in this entire comparison. You're either optimizing for your own monthly cash flow today, or you're optimizing for what your family keeps tomorrow. Most families don't even realize they're making the choice until they've already signed a deed in Pennsylvania. I had a couple on a Zoom call a few months ago. They built a spreadsheet comparing the 2 states, and they were sharing their screen, walking me through, column by column. They'd already decided on Pennsylvania. The husband had just retired from a pharmaceutical company in central New Jersey. They were pulling about $120,000 a year from his 401k. Their house in Rockland County was worth about $750,000, and the plan was to sell, buy something smaller in Bucks County for around $500,000, and bank the rest. He'd been binge watching my channel for about 6 months and had a whole list of towns he wanted to ask me about. Solid plan. Then I asked if they had talked to an estate attorney about the inheritance tax. Dead silence. His wife grabbed her phone while we were still on the call. $750,000 in total assets at 4.5%. That's $33,750 going to the state of Pennsylvania before their 2 kids see a dollar. She looked at him and said, "Did we factor that in?" They hadn't. Nobody had mentioned it. Not their financial advisor, not the first agent they had spoken with. They still moved to Pennsylvania. The monthly income tax savings made more sense for their specific situation because they were heavy 401k withdrawals and light on estate concerns. But they restructured their estate plan with an attorney first, added life insurance to offset the hit, and made the decision with full information. That's the whole point. You need to know this number exists before you sign anything. All right, so that's income tax and inheritance tax. 2 sides of the same decision. But here's where the monthly math gets even more complicated than people expect. Property taxes. Everyone knows New York property taxes are high. The state numbers confirm it. The median annual property tax in New York is $3,755. In Westchester County specifically, it's over $9,000. That's $750 a month just in property tax before you pay anything else. Pennsylvania looks much better on paper. The median statewide property tax is $2,223. But for seniors specifically, the story starts to flip. And this is the part that genuinely surprised me when I pulled the data. New York has a program called Enhanced Star. If you're 65 or older and your household income is under $107,300, that threshold goes up to $110,750 for the 2026-2027 school year. The first $86,100 of your home's assessed value is exempt from school taxes. That's a massive chunk of the bill just erased. On top of that, many New York municipalities offer a senior citizen exemption. If your income is under $75,000, that exemption can cut your remaining property tax bill by up to 50%. Stack those 2 programs together, a moderate income widow on Long Island or in Dutchess County can see her annual property tax bill cut dramatically. In some cases, cut nearly in half. But here's what Pennsylvania offers. The property tax rent rebate program. The maximum rebate is $1,000. The income limit is $48,110. If you're a middle-class retiree making $60,000 or $70,000 a year, you don't qualify. 0 relief. You're fully exposed to whatever your local school district decides to charge. You're probably thinking, but Pennsylvania property taxes are lower overall, so it doesn't matter. And at the statewide median level, that's true. But here's what actually happens when you pick a specific town, because nobody retires at the statewide median. And if you want the full breakdown for your specific situation, I put together a free Pennsylvania versus New York retirement decision guide. It covers 15 retirement scenarios with a winner for each, the complete tax comparison table, estate planning strategies, and a 10-step domicile audit checklist if you're moving from New York. The link is in the description and the QR code is on screen. And if you'd rather talk through your numbers directly, book a call using the link below. Here's why this math matters so much in practice. Pennsylvania's property taxes are driven almost entirely by local school districts. Move to a suburb with top-rated schools, places like Central Bucks, Council Rock, Upper Dublin, Great Valley, and you're paying aggressive millage rates that push your annual property tax bill to $7,000, $8,000, even $9,000 on a moderately priced home. And those rates don't freeze for seniors. Every year, when the school board approves the new budget, your bill adjusts with it. So a retiree who sells a home in Westchester and buys in a highly rated Pennsylvania suburb expecting a massive property tax break might be disappointed. The purchase price is lower, but the effective tax rate can be higher in percentage terms. And there's no enhanced star equivalent to soften the blow. Now, most people stop here. Income tax, inheritance tax, property tax, they think they've got the full picture. But there's a hidden tax in Pennsylvania that catches affluent retirees completely off guard. And it only applies if you choose to retire in one specific city, Philadelphia. A lot of New York retirees look at Philadelphia and see exactly what they want. Walkability, a restaurant scene that rivals Brooklyn, world-class museums, a direct Amtrak train to Penn Station in under 2 hours. No need for a car. It looks like the perfect urban retirement for someone leaving New York but wanting a similar lifestyle at a fraction of the cost. But Philadelphia has something called the school income tax, SIT for short. And it does something no other municipality in the Philadelphia suburbs does. It taxes your unearned investment income at 3.74%. Dividends, short-term capital gains, royalties, certain rental income, all taxed at 3.74%. Let's put a number on it. You've got $600,000 in a taxable brokerage account and it's generating $30,000 a year in dividends and realized gains. Philadelphia takes $1,122 of that every single year, on top of federal taxes, on top of everything else. Here's what makes this a trap. Move 5 miles outside of city limits, settle in a borough like Media in Delaware County, or Ambler in Montgomery County, or Doylestown up in Bucks. That SIT disappears completely. It only exists inside the city of Philadelphia. The suburbs are exempt. So if you're retiring with significant investment income and you're drawn to Philadelphia for the walkability and the culture, you need to run the SIT math first. For a lot of affluent retirees, that 3.74% makes Philadelphia one of the most expensive retirement addresses in the entire state. Meanwhile, a walkable suburban borough 20 minutes outside of the city costs you $0 in SIT and still gives you most of the lifestyle that you're looking for. All right, let me shift to the day-to-day costs because some of these numbers surprise me and a few of them completely contradict what most people assume. Let's start with housing because for most retirees, this is the biggest single expense. A median home price statewide in New York is over $460,000. In Pennsylvania, it's closer to $300,000. That's a massive gap right there. But statewide averages are misleading because nobody retires in a statewide average. You retire in a specific town. And here's where the New York numbers get painful. The Hudson Valley, which used to be the affordable escape for priced out downstate New Yorkers, has seen prices explode. Every county in the region now has a median above $350,000. Rockland County has crossed $700,000. Long Island is even higher. If you're a New Yorker hoping to downsize within the state, you're not unlocking nearly as much equity as you'd think. Pennsylvania gives you real options. And this is the key difference. Downsizing in New York often means a smaller place that still costs a lot to carry. Downsizing into Pennsylvania is not just smaller, it's smarter. Lower purchase price, lower state tax on your retirement income, and usually lower ongoing housing pressure. The Lehigh Valley, which is only about 90 minutes from Manhattan, still offers solid housing stock in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. South Central PA, places like Lancaster County and Franklin County, is even more affordable. And if you're looking at the Philadelphia suburbs specifically, you'll find a wider range of price points than what's available in the New York suburbs. One thing to factor in, a lot of retirees, especially those wanting to avoid maintenance, look at 55 and over active adult communities. Pennsylvania has a huge supply there, especially in the Lehigh Valley and Lancaster County. Newer construction, single floor rancher layouts, no stairs. But HOA fees in those communities run $200 to $800 a month, depending on what's included. That fee covers snow removal, landscaping, exterior maintenance. Convenient, but it's a permanent line item on a fixed income, and it does go up every year, so don't ignore it. Interestingly, Long Island has become one of the hottest 55 and up markets in the entire country right now. Retirees are increasingly refusing to leave the Northeast and move to Florida. They want to stay near family, and that demand is pushing prices and HOA costs higher in New York's 55 and up communities too. Beyond housing, the everyday cost gaps are real, but not always in the direction you'd expect. Groceries in Philadelphia run about 15% cheaper than New York City. Pittsburgh is even lower. Over 20 or 30 years of retirement, buying groceries every week, that savings compounds into tens of thousands of dollars. Car insurance is another clear gap. New York averages about $341 a month for full coverage. Pennsylvania runs closer to the national average of about $209 a month. That's $132 in monthly savings, almost $1,600 a year on car insurance alone. But here's one that defies everything you'd expect: utility bills. New York's electricity rate is 25.43 cents per kilowatt hour. Pennsylvania's is 18.43 cents. New York is clearly more expensive per unit, but New York homes tend to be smaller, denser, and they use significantly less electricity. Average monthly consumption in New York, 566 kilowatt hours. In Pennsylvania, 791. The result is average monthly electric bills in New York at about $143.93. In Pennsylvania, $145.78, less than $2 apart, basically identical. So if someone tells you New York utilities will bankrupt you in retirement, the electricity data says that's not true. Now here's where Pennsylvania wins big on costs, and it's a number that matters more the older you get: long-term care. A semi-private nursing home in Pennsylvania averages about $141,985 a year. In New York, that same room costs roughly $176,660. That's about $35,000 more per year in New York. If you're self-funding a nursing home stay for even 2 years, Pennsylvania saves you $70,000. 3 years, over $100,000. That gap is enormous, and it's one that retirees don't think about until a health crisis forces the conversation. Home health aides run about $35 an hour in both states, so in-home care costs are basically the same. But if you ever need a facility, Pennsylvania's advantage is hard to ignore. And then there are tolls. If you're driving between PA and New York to visit family, and a lot of retirees make that trip regularly, the toll costs add up fast. The Pennsylvania Turnpike is the most expensive toll road in the country. You need an easy pass just to make it manageable. New York offers something Pennsylvania doesn't: a 50% toll discount on the thruway specifically for seniors over 65. Your tolls get cut in half automatically when you're enrolled. Pennsylvania has no equivalent program. For a retiree making monthly trips to see grandkids on Long Island, that discount saves real money over the course of a year. And honestly, that proximity piece matters beyond just dollars. One of the biggest advantages Pennsylvania has over Florida or the Carolinas for New York retirees is geography. The Philadelphia suburbs put you within a 2-hour drive of most of the New York metro area. You can visit grandkids on a Saturday and sleep in your own bed that night. That emotional advantage doesn't show up on a spreadsheet, but it's the reason a lot of families choose PA over cheaper options down south. So the daily cost picture is more mixed than most people think. PA wins clearly on groceries, car insurance, long-term care costs. New York wins on senior toll discounts, and utilities are essentially a wash. But there's one final piece that I haven't covered yet. And for anyone seriously planning a move from New York to Pennsylvania, this might be the most important part of this entire video: the domicile audit. You can't just buy a house in Pennsylvania and declare yourself a resident. Not if you're coming from New York. The New York Department of Taxation and Finance aggressively audits former residents who claim they've changed their domicile. And I mean aggressively. Here's how it works. New York has a 183-day statutory residency rule. If you spend more than 183 days in New York in a single calendar year and you maintain what they call a permanent place of abode in the state, New York considers you a statutory resident. They will tax your entire income at New York rates. and any fraction of a day counts as a full day. You drive into Manhattan for a doctor's appointment and drive home to Bucks County that same evening, that counts as a full day in New York. And if you keep any property in New York after you move, even a small condo, even a summer cottage on the North Shore of Long Island, the auditors go deep. They pull your EasyPass toll records to track which state you're driving through. They look at credit card swipe locations. They check where your dogs or cats go to the vet. They pull ATM withdrawal locations. They look at cell tower data from your phone. They check where your family heirlooms and valuable artwork are stored. If the auditor determines that your New York residence is bigger, nicer, or more valuable than your Pennsylvania home, that's a strike against you. If your primary care doctor is still in New York, that's a strike. Your dentist, your accountant, your church or synagogue membership, they're building a comprehensive case for where your life is actually centered, not where your mail goes, where your life actually happens. A failed domicile audit means New York continues to tax your entire global income at full New York rates, every dollar, including the 401k and IRA withdrawals that Pennsylvania was supposed to exempt. The whole financial reason you moved evaporates overnight. So if you're making this transition, it has to be thorough. Sell the New York property or be extremely disciplined about how few days you spend there. Move your doctors, your financial advisors, your religious memberships, your club memberships, register your car in Pennsylvania, change your voter registration, update your will to reference Pennsylvania law, get a Pennsylvania driver's license within 60 days, and for the first 2 to 3 years, keep a detailed calendar showing exactly how many days you spend in each state. None of it is complicated, but every step matters. And the retirees who cut corners are the ones who end up writing six-figure checks back to New York. So here's what this all comes down to. If you're a private sector retiree living off a 401k or IRA, and you want the lowest possible monthly burn rate, Pennsylvania is the clear winner. Zero state tax on your retirement income, lower grocery costs, lower car insurance, and significantly cheaper long-term care if you ever need a nursing home. If you retired from a New York public pension, New York is extremely hard to beat. Your pension is fully exempt at any amount. Stack Enhanced Star and the senior citizen exemption on top of that, and your monthly costs in a cheaper region of New York are more competitive than people realize. If protecting what you leave your kids is the priority, New York wins. Zero inheritance tax, your children keep everything the state doesn't touch. And if Philadelphia is on your radar for the walkability and the culture, run the school income tax math on your investment income before you commit. That 3.74% changes the equation quickly. If you're a snowbird who wants to keep one foot in New York and spend winters somewhere warm, be extremely careful. New York's domicile rules are built to catch exactly this situation. Pennsylvania is far less aggressive about auditing part-year residents, which gives you more flexibility if you want to split time between states. And if you're a widow or widower living primarily on Social Security and modest savings, both states exempt Social Security completely. New York may actually win on the property tax side if you qualify for the senior citizen exemption. But Pennsylvania wins on lower baseline housing and grocery costs. That one comes down to the specific town and the specific income level. The biggest takeaway from all of this, Pennsylvania is the stronger state for your monthly cash flow while you're alive. New York is the stronger state for your family's inheritance when you're gone. And the right answer depends on which of those matters more to you. At the end of the day, a lot of retirees aren't really choosing between two states. They're choosing between continuity and relief. Stay where the routines are familiar, the doctors are familiar, the roads are familiar, or take the pressure off the budget and build a version of retirement that feels lighter and more sustainable. For a lot of New Yorkers, Pennsylvania hits that sweet spot. It improves the math without forcing you to abandon the whole region that you know. Now you know the real financial trade-offs between Pennsylvania and New York for retirement. But if New Jersey is also on your list, and for a lot of New Yorkers it is, that comparison has its own surprise. New Jersey just passed a program called Stay NJ that fundamentally changes the property tax math for retirees starting in 2026. I break down every dollar of that in this video. Watch that next because the number that's shifted is large enough to flip the decision for a lot of families. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.